He was drunk at work. He got caught by his boss. He had a few, what do you want to call them, hobbies. Apparently he liked gambling and drinking. So, that was a little, it seemed like they all did it. I don't know. And so, returning to Baltimore, he obtained a license to marry his cousin Virginia. He was 26, she was 13. So, yeah, that one, apparently that, did go on then. So, and then after that, he was reinstated by White after promising to be good, and went back to Richmond with Virginia and her mother. And he remained at the Messenger until 1837, 2 years. During this period, Poe claimed that its circulation increased from 700 to 3,500. He published several poems, book reviews, critiques, and stories. In May of 1836, he and Virginia Clem finally held a Presbyterian wedding ceremony. And, of course, they lied about her age. So, there you go. She was 13. They said she was 21. The narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym of Nantucket was published and widely reviewed in 1838. In the summer of 1839, Poe became assistant editor of Burton's Gentleman's Magazine. He published numerous articles, stories, and reviews, and he enhanced his reputation as a trenchant critic, which he established at the Southern Messenger. Also in 1839, the collection, Tales of the Grotesque and Arabesque, was published in 2 volumes, though he made little money from it and received mixed reviews on it. He left Burton's after about a year, and he became an assistant at Graham's Magazine. 1840, he published a prospectus announcing his intentions to start his own journal called The Stylus. Originally, Poe intended to call the journal The Pen, P-E-N-N, as it would have been based in Philadelphia in 1840. In the 1840 issue of Philadelphia Saturday Evening Post, he bought advertising space for his prospectus. The journal was never produced before Poe's death. So, and around this time, hey Michelle, how are you? I know it's kind of boring, but it has a lot to do when he wrote certain things, so bear with me. Did you bring fish sticks? I'm hungry. And around this time, he attempted to secure a position with the Tyler administration, claiming he was a member of the Whig Party. He hoped to be appointed to the Custom House in Philadelphia from President Tyler's son, Robert. An acquaintance of Poe's friend failed to show up. Poe failed to show up for a meeting with Thomas to discuss the appointment, claiming to have been sick, though Thomas believed he had been drunk again. Though he was promised an appointment, all the positions were filled. I know, you're so silly. Yeah. That's not fair. You're sitting there, you're eating fish sticks. You're terrible. I love it. It's great. On an evening in January 1842, Virginia showed the first signs of consumption, or TB, while singing and playing the piano. Poe described it as breaking a blood vessel in her throat. She only partially recovered. Poe began to drink more heavily under the stress of her illness. He left Graham's and attempted to find a new position. He was angling for some kind of government post. He returned to New York, where he worked at the Evening Mirror before becoming editor of the Broadway Journal and later the sole owner. And he ended up alienating himself from other writers by publicly accusing Henry Wadsworth Longfellow of plagiarism. Longfellow never did respond to that. In January 1845, his poem, The Raven, appeared in the Evening Mirror and became a popular sensation. It made Poe a household name almost instantly. It was concurrently published in the American Review, but the Broadway Journal failed in 1846. Poe moved to Fordham, New York, or what is known now as the Bronx. That home is known today as Poe Cottage. Yeah, it wasn't cut like it is today. That stuff was rock gut, what they called rock gut, basically. Anyway, the home is known today as Poe Cottage on the southeast corner of Grand Concourse and Kingsbridge Road, where he befriended the Jesuits at St. John's College nearby. Virginia died there on January 30th, 1847. And a lot of biographers and critics say that they kind of suggest that Poe's frequent theme of the death of a beautiful woman stems from the repeated loss of women throughout his life, including his wife. That's so sad. That's so sad. Poe became increasingly unstable after his wife's death. He attempted to court poet Sarah Helen Whittam. Their engagement failed because of Poe's drinking and erratic behavior. There is also strong evidence that Whitman's mother intervened and did much to derail the relationship. Boy, they were nosy back then, weren't they? They always got into stuff. Get out of there. Poe then returned to Richmond and resumed a relationship with his childhood sweetheart, whom she had been married, but with Sarah Royster. Here we go again. She's back. So, he had a lot of literary influence during his lifetime. So, on October 3rd, 1849, Poe was found delirious on the streets of Baltimore, in great distress and in need of immediate assistance, according to Joseph Walker, who found him. He was taken to Washington Medical College, where he died on Sunday, 1849, at 5 in the morning. Poe was never coherent long enough to explain how he became to be in that condition and was oddly wearing clothes that were not his. He is said to have repeatedly called out the name Reynolds on the night before his death, though it is unclear to whom he was referring. Some sources say that Poe's final words were, "Lord, help my poor soul." But all medical records have been lost, including his death certificate. Well, that's convenient. You sometimes wonder, because back then you could read something, nobody's going to know anything. And the newspapers at the time reported his death as congestion of the brain or cerebral inflammation. Common euphemisms for deaths from disreputable causes such as alcoholism. But the actual cause of death still remains a mystery. Speculation has included delirium, heart disease, epilepsy, syphilis, meningeal inflammation, cholera, and rabies. Okay, I don't know about rabies, but one theory suggests that cooping was the cause of final deaths, a form of electoral fraud in which citizens were forced to vote for a candidate, sometimes leading to violence and murder. Cooping. I don't think so. Do you think they had him killed? It could well be. That's what they're saying. Cooping. On the day Edgar Allan Poe was buried, a long obituary appeared in the New York Tribune signed Ludwig. It was soon published throughout the country. The piece began, Edgar Allan Poe is dead. He died in Baltimore the day before yesterday. This announcement will startle many, but few will be grieved by it. Ludwig was soon identified as Rufus Wilmot Griswold, an editor, critic, and anthologist who had borne a grudge against Poe since 1942. Somehow Griswold became Poe's literary executioner and attempted to destroy his reputation even after his death. I don't know. This guy held a deep hatred for Poe for whatever reason. Rufus Griswold, maybe that's where they got the Griswolds from, I don't know, wrote a biographical article of Poe called Memoir of the Author, which he included in the 1850 volume of the collected works. And he depicted Poe as the depraved, drunken, drug-addled madman and included Poe's letters as evidence. Many of his claims were either lies or distorted half-truths. It is now known that Poe is not a drug addict. Griswold's book was denounced by those who knew Poe well. but it became popularly accepted. Partly in part because it was the only full biography available, and in part because readers were thrilled at the thought of reading works by an evil man. There you go. Letters that Griswold presented as proof were later revealed as forgeries. Okay. During his lifetime, Poe was mostly recognized as a literary critic. Fellow critic James Russell Lowe called him the most discriminating, philosophical, and fearless critic upon imaginative works who has written in America, suggesting that he occasionally used prussic acid instead of ink. Poe's caustic remarks earned him the reputation of being a tomahawk man. For whatever reason, a favorite target of Poe's was Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. But he was often defended by his friends in what was later called the Longfellow War. Poe accused Longfellow of the heresy of the didactic, writing poetry that was preachy and basically plagiarism. Poe correctly predicted that Longfellow's reputation in style poetry would decline, concluding, "We grant him high qualities, but deny him the future." Poe is also known as a writer of fiction and became one of the first American authors of the 19th century to become more popular in Europe than the U.S. Yeah, I agree, Michelle. It made him more famous. Yeah, I agree. Poe is particularly respected in France, in part due to early translations. Baudelaire's translations became definitive renditions of Poe's work throughout Europe. Yeah, isn't that true? Nobody remembers the other guy. Yeah, isn't that true? Poe's early detective fiction, featuring C. Auguste Dupin, laid the groundwork for future detectives in literature. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle said, and I quote, "Each of Poe's detective stories is a root from which a whole literature has developed. Where was the detective story until Poe breathed the breath of life into it?" So there you go. You go, Sir Arthur. The mystery writers of America have named their awards for excellence in the genre the Edgars. Poe's work also influenced science fiction, notably Jules Verne, who wrote a sequel to Poe's novel, the narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym of Nantucket, called An Antarctic Mystery, also known as The Sphinx of the Icefields. Science fiction author H.G. Wells noted, "Pym tells what a very intelligent mind could imagine about the South Polar region a century ago." Okay. In 2013, The Guardian cited the narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym of Nantucket as one of the greatest novels ever written in the English language, and noted its influence on later authors such as Henry James, of course Arthur Conan Doyle, David Morrell. Poe's works have spawned imitators, of course. What else? One trend among imitators of Poe have been claims by clairvoyants or psychics, of course, to be channeling Poe's poems from Poe's spirit. That'll work. One of the most notable of these was Lizzie Doughton, who published poems called Poems from the Inner Life in 1863, in which she claimed to have received new compositions by Poe's spirit. Chris, is that how you work? I'm just kidding, of course. Is that how you work? Is that where you get your stuff? I know it now. Okay. We found out your secret. The compositions were reworkings of famous poems such as The Bells, but reflected a new outlook. Yeah, okay. Even so, Poe has received not only praise but criticism as well, partly of the negative perception of his personal character and the influence on his reputation. Of course, I knew you were... Did you channel Poe and Lovecraft? I bet you did. William Butler Yeats was occasionally critical of Poe and once called him vulgar. Now see, and another one, Ralph Waldo Emerson reacted to The Raven by saying, "I see nothing in it." Are you kidding? I,